Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So this is my first video lecture, which is the beginning of the NCERT series for the GS subjects, uh, and I'll be specifically focusing on those students who are actually preparing for the BPSC, and this will be a free lecture series to create a environment for reading the NCERTs, and I'll try to make it much more interesting. So the first chapter, how, when, and where, actually starts with the general discussion about the history and how history is connected with the notion of the dates, and the NCERT also talks about the fact that how few people find history very boring because they think that history is only related to the dates and they have to remember a lot of dates. So in simple layman term, NCERT defined that history is nothing but it is about the changes which has occurred over the time. And next, the NCERT talks about what is past and what is present. How do we know what is past and what is present? Okay, and it also give us the anecdote to us. So one anecdote is about watching someone a cup of tea at a roadside tea stall, and someone might think that when did the tea was started, okay, or when did people started drinking tea. And next is if suppose you are traveling with train and you might wonder when did the railway started, okay, and what was there before railway was not invented, how people used to travel. So all such historical question refers us back to the notion of time, okay, and people in India did not begin drinking tea one fine day. So NCERT talks about the fact that people did not started drinking tea one fine day. They developed a taste for it over time. So as the time passed, they started developing taste for the tea, and there can be no more clear date for process such as this. Similarly, we cannot fix one single date on which a British rule was established or the national movement started. Okay, so now the next question which NCERT asks is, why then do we continue to associate history with a string of dates? Why do we associate history with dates? Okay, so the NCERT talks about the fact that the NCERT says that association has a reason. There was a time when history was an account of the battles and big events. So whenever we read about history, it's always about the big battles which have been fought, or big events which has happened. For example, let's say just an example I would like to give. Why do we study about the Battle of Panipat? Why do we study about the Battle of Plassey? Okay, or why do we we talk about the Carnatic Wars? Okay, why these things are important? Okay, so it was about the rulers and their policies. Okay, so basically history is nothing because the rulers which were ruling at that point of time and their policies were very, very important. Historians wrote about the year a king was crowned, the year he married, and the year he had a child. So just an example I would like to give. So do you think that if suppose you lived your life as a common man in the past, do you think that your history will be written somewhere or you will be remembered in the history? Obviously not, because if a common man was there, nothing was written about them, but everything which was written about was about the kings, about their policies, what they used to do, whom they married. So all those things were discussed in the history, or all those things become the part of the history. So have you seen in the history textbooks, the past 2 years, historians now write about a host of other issues, like they look at how people earned their livelihood, what they produced, and they ate, how cities developed and the markets came up. So now, next question which NCERT asks is that does each and every date is important, or there are some dates which are important? So the NCERT says that the dates we select, the dates around which we compose our history of the past, are not important on their own. It's not like they are just important for the sake of being important. Okay, they become vital because now NCERT is giving us the reason why those dates are important, because we focus on particular set of events as important. If if our focus of study changes, if we begin to look at the new issues, a new set of data will appear significant. So by every passing years, could be a possibility that the previous event might not appear important than the next event. Okay. So consider an example in the histories written by British historians in India. Now it's talking about the British historians and British history written in India. These histories began with the rule of the first Governor General Warren Hastings. Okay, because Warren Hastings was the first Governor General, and this becomes a factual information also, and ended up with the last Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten. So whenever you will be reading about the Indian polity, when we will be covering Lakshmi Kant, so in that particular book we will read more about the role of Lord Mountbatten. Okay, in separate chapters we read about the deeds of the others. Now, like Hastings, Wellesley, Bentinck, Dalhousie, Canning, Lawrence, Lytton, Ripon, Curzon, Harding, Irwin. So there's an endless list of the these people who and never-ending successions of the governor generals and viceroys. All these dates in this history book were linked to these personalities, to their activities, to their policies, to their achievements. Because now in the upcoming maybe paragraphs, we will understand why we get to know more about these personalities and what was the reason behind this. Okay. So now the next question which NCERT asks is, can we not write about the history of this period in a different way? How does we focus on the activities of a different group and classes in Indian society within the format of this history of the Governor Generals? Okay, so it's not like that during the period of these Governor Generals and the Viceroys, only these people were existing. Okay, so there were some other folks like some local merchants, some peasants, okay, some local rulers. They were also there, but these people are highlighted in a much better way, and now we will understand why they are highlighted. Okay, so when we write history or a story, we divide it into the chapters. Why do we do this? So why there is a demarcation of the chapters which is there? Now NCERT gives us the answer. It is to give each chapter some coherence. It is to tell a story in a way that makes some sense and can be followed. Okay. So basically, in this process, we focus only on those events that help us to give shape to the story we are telling. Okay. In the histories that revolve around the life of the British Governor Generals, the activities of the Indians simply do not fit. Okay. So they have no space. What then do we do? So shall we not talk about the other freedom fighters? Shall we not talk about the Gandhiji? Shall we not talk about Jawaharlal Nehru? Okay, it's not like that. We have to talk about them. Okay. So clearly, we need format for our history. This would mean that the old dates will no longer have the significance they earlier had. A new set of dates will become more important for us to know. Okay. Now next is, how do we periodize? This is very important, that how do we do the demarcation, and from where did the notion of dividing the Indian history into ancient, medieval and modern came? Okay, so in 1817, James Mill, a Scottish economist and political philosopher, published a massive 3-volume work, A History of British India. And this is again a factual information, can be asked in BPSC. In this, he divided Indian history into 3 periods: Hindu, Muslim and British period. Okay, this periodization came to be widely accepted. Can you think of any problem with this way of looking at the Indian history? So we'll see what is a problem with that. And why do we try to divide the history into different periods? We do so in an attempt to capture the characteristics of a time. We want to actually capture the characteristics of the time, its central features as they appear to us. So the terms through which we periodize, that is demarcate the difference between the periods, become important. They reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the significance of the changes from one period to the next. Okay. Mill thought that all the Asian societies were at a lower level of the civilization than Europe. So basically, even it was widely discussed during those times that it was white man's burden, and Rudyard Kipling has talked a lot about it, that it was white man's burdens to civilize the natives or the Indians, because they were not civilized. Okay, So the terms through which we periodize this is demarcate the differentiate between the periods become important. They reflect our ideas about the past. They show how we see the significance uh, of the change from period to the next. Mill thought that all the Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than the Europe. So basically, whatever the civilization was there, the Ottoman Turks, uh, any civilization which was there, including the Indian civilization, uh, it was inferior to the British civilization. But that was not the case. We understand that fact that the Indus civilization, Indus Valley civilization, it was one of the most sophisticated civilization which was there even many years before or many centuries before when the Britishers came to India. So that was the white notion created by the British people, specifically highlighted by the Mill, that Asian societies were at a lower level of civilization than the Europe. According to his telling of history, before the British came to India, Hindu Muslim despots ruled the country. Religious intolerance, caste taboos, and superstitious practices dominated. British rule, Mill felt, could civilize India. To do this, it was necessary to introduce European manners, arts, institution, and laws in India. So basically, he was of opinion that European manners, arts, institution, and laws of in India, which were related to the British era or British period, was important to be introduced in India. Mill, in fact, suggested that the British should conquer all the territories in India to ensure the enlightenment and happiness of the Indian people. But but the irony is that never happened. Were all the Indians happy when the entire British came into the control of the Britishers? No, that was not the case. Because if that would have been case, surely our freedom fighters, they would not have fought such a hard fought war with the Britishers. And even freedom fighters like Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Rajguru, they should not have or they would not have laid their lives for for their country. Okay, so in the so basically, Mill in fact suggested that that the entire India needs to be conquered by the Britishers, and for India was not capable of progress without the British help. You see what kind of notion was created, that India was not capable of the developing on its own without the help of the Britishers. That was not the case. So and even prior to Britishers coming to India, India was known as Golden Bird, okay, country of the Golden Bird. So the period before British rule was one of darkness. Can such a conception be accepted today? Nobody will accept this notion, obviously. Okay. So in any case, we can refer to any period of the history as Hindu or Muslim. Did not a variety of faiths exist simultaneously in these periods? Like, we are a secular country. We the Muslims are there, the Hindus are there, the Sikhs are there, the Parsis are there, and secularism is one of the ethos of the Indian Constitution. Okay. So now, moving away from the British classification, historians have usually divided Indian history into ancient, medieval, and modern. This division too has its problem. It is a periodization that is borrowed from West, where the modern period was associated with the growth of all the forces of the modernity: science, reason, democracy, liberty, and equality. Medieval was term used to describe a society where these features of modern society do not exist. So basically, whatever was medieval, whatever was ancient, was the anti of the modern. So modern period was about civil, about discoveries, about enlightenment. So whatever was not there in the uh, medieval and ancient period was termed as not modern. Okay, so medieval was a term used to describe a society where these features of modern society did not exist. Can we uncritically accept this characterization of the modern period? As you well see in this book, under British rule, people did not have equality, freedom, or liberty. I was talking about this irony that it was not the case under the British rule. Not at all there was liberty among the liberty was not there, freedom was not there. Okay, nor was a period one of the economic growth and progress. Many historians therefore refer to this period as colonial. What is colonial then? Okay, so in this book, you will read more about the ways the British came to conquer the country and establish their rule, subjugating the local Nawabs and Rajas. We know that by coercion, by force, they started, interfering in the local politics. Okay, and you will see how they established control over the economy in the society, collected revenue to meet all the expenses, bought the goods they wanted at low prices, produce crops they needed for export, and you will understand the changes that came about as a consequence. You will also come to know about the changes British rule brought about in values and tastes, customs and practices. So you will, however, find that all the classes and group did not experience these changes in the same way. That is why the book is called Our Past in the Plural. Now next is, how do we know? What sources do the historian use in writing about the last 250 years of the Indian history? Administration produces records. So basically, one important source is the official records of the British administration. The British believe that the act of writing wasn't important. Every instruction, plan, policy decision, agreement, investigation had to be clearly written up. Okay, so they were very much particular about having the written documents. Okay, and the British also felt that all important documents and letter needed to be carefully preserved. So that is the reason it was preserved in the form of documents. So they set up record room attached to all administrative institution. The village tehsildars, the office, the collectorate, the commissioner office, the provincial secretariat, the law courts all had their record rooms. Specialized institutions like archives and museums were also established to preserve the important records. Letters and memos that moved from one branch of the administration to another in the early years of the 19th century can still be read in the archives. So there is National Archive of India, where you can read those letters which were handwritten. You can also study the notes and report that district officials prepared, or the instructions and directives that were sent by the officials at the top to provincial administrators. In the early years of the 19th century, these documents were carefully copied and beautifully written by the calligraphist, who is specialized in the art of beautiful writing. By the middle of the 19th century, with the spread of printing, multiple copies of these records were printed as proceedings of each government department. Now, next is what was surveys and why surveys become important. The practice of surveying also became common under the colonial administration. And why it was important? Because they believed that the country had to be properly known before it could be effectively administered. And that is one of the most important reasons why the Britishers were more successful than the Dutch, the Portuguese, or the other Europeans who came to India. And by the early 19th century, detailed surveys were being carried out to map the entire country. In the villages, revenue surveys were conducted. The effort was to know the topography, the soil, the quality, the flora, the fauna, and the local histories, and their cropping pattern, all the facts seen as necessary to know about to administer the region. From the end of the 19th century, census operations were held every 10 years. These prepared detailed record of the number of people in all the provinces in India. And then there were many other surveys like botanical survey, geological survey, archaeological surveys, anthropological surveys, forest surveys. So what official record do not tell? Now this is very important. This I have already discussed, that all those history, all those surveys is actually talking about what the West thought about it. Was the Orientalists thought about it. Okay, so from this vast corpus of the records, we can get to know a lot, but we must remember that there are official records. They tell us what the official thought. So basically, what official thought. So who were the officials? The Britishers were the officials. Okay, and now next is, they were interested in and what they wish to preserve. These records do not always help us understand what other people in the country felt, what lay behind their actions. For what, we need to look elsewhere. So basically, we have diaries of people, accounts of pilgrims and travelers, autobiographies of important personalities, popular booklets that were sold in the local bazaars. As printing spread, newspapers were published and issues were debated in the public. So all these sources, however, was produced by those who were literate. From these, we will not be able to understand how history was experienced and lived by the tribals and the peasants, the workers in the mines, or the poor on the street. Getting to know their lives is much difficult task. For example, take the example of the Bengal famine, which happened in the Bengal. It was because of the bad policies of the Britishers. Okay, and we just know the numbers, that there were few numbers of the people which died, but nobody in the history, especially in the British records, that what was the main reason that why they were living such a bad life and why people died because of that. Okay, yet this can be done if we make a little bit of effort. When you read the books, you will see how this can be done. Okay, so there's some sources which are there. For example, newspaper provide account of the movement in different parts of the world. More than 200 policemen in Delhi refused to take their food on Thursday morning as a protest against the low salaries and bad quality of food. As the news spread to the other police station, the men were also refused to take food. One of the strikers said the food supplied to us from the police line's kitchen is not fit for human consumption. Even cattle would not eat the chapatis and dal which we have to eat. So this is from the Hindustan Times, 22nd of March 1946. So that's all about today. So in the next chapter we'll be discussing about from trade to territory, the company establishes power. That how did the company actually establish the power. So thank you so much, and you can share this video lecture with your friends, and if somebody is financially not so strong, so maybe it can be helpful for them. Thank you so much.